Are you listening?
Hi everyone, and welcome back to The Forecast with me, Ahom. Now this episode I wanted to do something a little different. Recently, I've been lucky enough to participate in some great online conferences and panels. Today, I'm super excited to share one of them with you. Vivian Acquah, a top inclusivity and wellness pro from Holland, invited me on her live show, Humanise the Workplace. With that being said, Jaz the AI has this episode off. So today, you'll hear the live audio from the event. We tackle inclusive leadership, challenges bosses have in connecting with remote teams, and much more from the expert panel of guests. There's a lot of insight here, so grab a pen. Here's Vivian.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Vivian Acquah, the Inclusive Workplace Wellness Advocate, and I am going to introduce Binaz Chibukchu. I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing the name right. Binaz is an established leader with extensive experience leading international teams, projects, and operations in banking, retail, and startup. Teresa Sigleto Hollema helps virtual leaders and culturally diverse teams to collaborate, create, and succeed. And she's also the author of Virtual Teams Across Cultures. And last but not least, Ahom is helping clients build and implement strategies and concepts to empower diverse talent and improve employee experience. Welcome, everybody. I am going to bombard the first question, like, why do we need to humanize the virtual workspace? Let's start with you, Teresa.
Okay, I will start. Well,
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty easy one in that we're starting with a technology relationship. That's one of the issues that happens when you're working virtually is you have to use metal and technology in order to connect with somebody who's far away. And so what that does to us is starts to say, well, we're feeling far from each other. Let's just focus on the tasks. Let's just focus on the agenda. And we start to lose our humanity in this. We start to forget that there's a person on the other end there. We use email and we forget, oh yeah, I need to communicate and connect in a way that's much more human. So I think we need to intentionally bring humanity back to this virtual relationship. And that's why I'm glad this is a topic in the first question.
Thank you for sharing that. And Binaz?
Yeah. Well, humanizing workplace is a little bit odd, actually, because business and people have to live together. I mean, without one another, they can't survive, can they?
Yeah. Yeah.
We come around the business, but then we have to interact to make sure that the business works. So, humanizing workplace, of course, how to bring this equilibrium in the business matters as well as the human aspect of things and create a more cohesive environment for all of us. And in virtual area, it becomes even challenging. So that there's the beauty.
Definitely. And Alex? Thank you,
Can you hear me
Binaz.
now?
And Alex? Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I've gone old school with the analog headphones. So yeah, I was just saying, I agree with that 100%. I think for so long, work has been something that we've had to do for money, and we've had to leave our whole selves at the door, right? And that barrier to fulfillment from our work, that barrier to having joy in what we do is set really high. So and thankfully that's changing now, but we aren't mindless drones we're not mindless drones for the most part. We're not mindless drones.
Exactly.
So people want to be themselves and get a sense of purpose from their work. I've spoken to people who don't feel included at work, and they miss that sense of belonging. So I think it's very important that we recognize that we are humans, and work from home. I would just say that working from home isn't a bad thing. It's not worse than working from the office. It's just different, and we need to make sure we have the right skills and hone our skills so we can accept that challenge.
Exactly. I also want to highlight Umesh, who is a frequent watcher. So he's saying humanizing the workplace is important. in a culture of bullying, staff do not speak up and innocent people suffer. So thank you, Umesh, for sharing that as well. And coming to the next question, how can leaders foster inclusion while working from home? What have you seen, Binas, when you...
Well, I lead a team of 20, and we're in different countries with different nationalities. We were so used to being together, coming together as big teams, also work together in smaller teams. And what we really needed when we went purely online was the space.
Yeah.
So the space to grieve together, to celebrate together, to talk, to listen to each other. That was so important, and giving it enough time, because we go into meeting after meeting. Oh, I need to deliver something. That mode didn't help. So we really consciously created the space for our team to be together.
What
And
do you, to give it more context, what do you mean with space? Because with me, I'm thinking like, are you using a special tool to do that? Or is it the time that you mean with space? Because space can be anything, right? You can now travel to Mars even. So what is space?
space can be anything, that's right. Of
Yeah.
course, we use Teams. I mean, that's our meeting medium.
Mm-hmm.
In our team meetings, what we say is enough time,
Yeah.
soft eyes, soft ears, listening to each other, being okay with being uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes different people feel different things. And when we express those, we should be just okay and we should just accept. So that's
Yeah.
also accepting, is also creating space, so that we build a community around trust, around openness, around having straightforward conversations. And that's what I mean by space, and it includes time as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm seeing a lot of options in the chat. So, Alex,
Yeah.
what does it mean for you? What do leaders do? What do leaders need to do to foster inclusion while working from home?
Well, they definitely need to recognize the situation we're in. You know, I've spoken to a lot of people over the last 5 years or so that feel they feel lonely at work.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes hard to believe, but there are a number of people who are feeling lonely while they work. And it's different to being alone. Feeling lonely and being alone are two different things.
Yeah.
But you know, disengagement is a problem. And we can't expect people to be high performers and be happy at work if they're disconnected and feel isolated. You know, you can't participate, you know, to that high level that bosses expect if you're sad.
How can they recognize an employee being disengaged or being sad? What are some key elements that a leader should look for?
Yeah, so definitely that inclusion piece is important. You know, diversity is the first step.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first step which a lot of companies try to attack first, because it is the kind of low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And that inclusion is a kind of it's an action, it's a verb, it's something you have to do. But you know, like we've covered, you have to give safe spaces. You have to give a safe space, a brave space for people to talk about those things that are important for them. So one thing that they can do, to answer the question, one thing we can do is to look at the meetings that we have. So much of our time is now online with using these apps and stuff, and we're having these meetings. And my wife is in the corporate world. She's going from meeting to meeting to work super hard. But I noticed that if you're going from 1 hour meeting to 1 hour meeting, when do you have time to eat? When do you have time to go to the toilet, to make your tea? So one thing I have recommended leaders do is try to transition from those 1 hour meetings to 15-minute meetings, to 45-minute meetings. It's more or less the same, but you give people time to ask questions about the weekend, or to volunteer information, to have those water cooler experiences. And I think that's what sometimes we miss if we're just going from meeting to meeting from 8 till late.
I agree with you. And also knowing that a lot of people are doing the back-to-back meetings, I would say the Zoom fatigue, it is real. And if you haven't experienced that, your people are experiencing that. Especially, we are now on a platform where I can see Teresa's background, I can see Alex's background, I can see Binaz's background. And that in itself, it's causing us to focus on so much more than only the conversation. Whilst if you are, on a platform where you're seeing 30 people, I know for myself that I'm very sensitive to that. So there are different settings that I use to prevent or decrease that fatigue, because I know if I'm seeing 30 people on my screen, I know by the end of the meeting, my energy is gone. And I'm a person who focuses on the details. That's a thing that I know, but you have to be really mindful of how people react to the virtual meetings, and the virtual meetings is different than having an offline meeting. So yeah, I can totally relate to that. Teresa.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little different angle.
Mm-hmm.
Virtual teams and inclusivity. And before COVID, when we had virtual teams across multinationals, let's say, which are the ones that I was
I was
thinking
about to say who had them, because here in the Netherlands, there was a virtual team wasn't a normal thing, but
well,
continue.
virtual teams have been around for years. It's just now all of a sudden everybody is doing it.
Yeah.
But virtual teams where you have people sitting in the Netherlands and in China and in India working together. So that's also a virtual team. And inclusivity has always been a conversation because the inclusivity is actually geographic. How do I include my distant colleagues? And one of the reasons that is because psychologically, we think of our colleagues who are far away as more abstract. So it's harder to include them because, well, this one's so much, my colleague next to me is so much easier to grab onto, and them over there. So it's hard for us to include. So therefore, what's interesting about now is we don't have these pockets of a few here, a few there, and then trying to be inclusive. We're all 100% remote.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to notice is those teams are feeling more inclusive because we're all now experiencing the same thing. Even if somebody was sitting in headquarters and had some sort of status, we're all 100% remote now. So it's hard to be inclusive. So there are inclusivity challenges for working from home and people, as we've been discussing. But then there's this other angle where actually being 100% remote has made it more inclusive for some teams.
I get you. Thank you. And I also want to highlight Goldshare. Goldshare is mentioning something about what Binaz shared. So she thinks regular check-ins with team members become really important. Having those one-on-one touch base moments, even if it's for 10 minutes or 50 minutes. I also see Umesh, who is sharing an acronym for team. Together, everyone achieves more. And that's a very interesting acronym as well. So for those of you who don't know the true definition of team, put it on there, remind yourself what a team is, and not working alone, but working together towards something. Thank you, Umesh, as well. And I want to go to the next question, because what are the challenges that teams can be facing while working from home? I know that, Alex, you highlighted one of the challenges, but are there more challenges what you can share?
Yeah, I would say one story I could share is, now I've closed my co-working space. I do a bit of consulting, and hopefully I can do a bit more and join more teams and give my viewpoint where I can and my support. But I spoke to a few kind of high-ranking executives recently who, unfortunately, are maybe also disconnected in a way from the rest of us and how a lot of people are working. And they had all the tools they needed to do their job. They had the super fast Wi-Fi, they had the ergonomic tables and chairs, and they didn't realize that a lot of the people they were speaking to didn't have that.
Exactly.
For some people, home isn't a safe space. For some people, home can be an abusive place, a place that has its own challenges. It may be a place that doesn't have a connection at all, let alone half decent, stable Wi-Fi. So we have to realize that not everyone, there isn't equality and equity in this time. yeah, this pandemic and the Black Lives Matter fallout, the racism that's going on in many parts of the world, that impacts us all, and prejudice that impacts us all in a different way.
Yeah, and I totally get that. And also know that I, as a parent, I also faced, some of the challenges while working from home and homeschooling at the same time, because it's asking a different capacity, a different energy from me. And I'm not, I did not go to school to teach. So we were having some challenges in the beginning. My son understands me now, and also we understand each other. But dealing with the fact that you have to teach on top of the work that you need to do, it is challenging in itself. And I want to use this moment to highlight to employers, be mindful of the situation that your employee or your people are in, because you never know what's rocking their boat. You never know until you ask. So use also the time to ask them for how you can support them, instead of asking about, you haven't done the work, where are you, and why haven't you done the work?
Absolutely, yeah.
Teresa.
Yeah, just building on what you've both said, it's something about caring from a distance. And a little bit uncomfortable for some people, because we're in each other's homes now. Not physically, obviously, but certainly in other ways, we're feeling in each other's homes. And so people are a little bit trying to figure out, where's the privacy line? And I think this COVID has eliminated or softened that privacy line. And so that some people have really risen to the challenge, or risen to the occasion, and cared from a distance, really helped and supported, especially when people are in a challenge. But as Alex was saying, some have really struggled to recognize that there's other experiences happening during this. So bringing in that humanity again, caring, and not letting the computers stop us from reaching out to each other, I think is one of the bigger challenges.
That's an amazing, thought. Don't let the computer hold you back for caring for one another. I love that. Thank you. Vinas.
Yes, just building on and making some other connections to what's been said already. The lines have been blurred. So I used to wake up at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I would be out and on my way to the office, and I would be back 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the evening, and that's my work time. But now working from home blurs those lines. So you can't just pocket things, especially with parents. I'm not a parent, so I don't have that part, but I can see, because I have my friends and I have my colleagues who struggle with it. And with our perfectionism and with our wish to deliver and be good for the company, we push ourselves so much that our contracts are 36-hour contracts, 40 hours contracts, but we find each other and find ourselves working 60 hours a week. That's not okay. That's the biggest challenge. When do we stop ourselves to say, enough? I need me time. I need to reflect. I need to think. I need to spend time with my family. So this is a big challenge. And still, some people have found their balances in that aspect, and some are still trying. So being open and talking about these kind of things helps raise the awareness and maybe turn these challenges into opportunities, I hope.
What have you done to prevent somebody within your team, or maybe outside of your team, not to go overboard with their productivity or with their time?
Well, I was very clear. I expect that I trust them. They're all adults. They're all very experienced people. So I trust that they would use their time to the best of their ability and to the best of their needs. But sometimes it is also good for the managers and the leaders to express their expectations. If you have to work on a weekend because you took care of your children during the week, that is fine. But don't overdo it. Or don't start sending the mails in the weekend, because that will create pressure on the receiver of that mail. So just be considerate about actions, consequences. And then if you're stuck, we have other hands and we have other brains to help out. So it is also be okay to ask for help.
Yeah,
that
I
opens
love
up
that.
many possibilities.
I love that. Alex, you
Vivian,
were about to
yeah.
say, oh, sorry.
Nope, I'll wait.
I was
You
just
were
going to say,
about to say something.
yeah, I was just going to say that high level of work that so many people are doing, it's unsustainable as well. And I think
Mhm.
that's where leaders have to recognize that when
Yes.
people accept a few stretch projects for a couple of days or weeks, that's manageable. But if it's months or a lot of work that is kind of unrecognized and it's high pressure, it's just unsustainable.
Absolutely.
Just as though is the physical side of the work, right? So
Yep.
if we're going from bed to sofa, or if you have a small apartment and you're only working on your bed because the living room is full, or you don't have a living room, what happens after 4 to 6 months of working hunched over on your bed is you get backache, and and then we go to our bosses and complain. So before it happens, companies have to recognize that they really need to look after people working from home.
I would say, follow up what Spotify did, right? Because they were ones of the first ones, I guess, in the beginning when this lockdown started. They were handing out, I know from the American part, I don't know for the other countries, but I knew that in America they were sharing bonuses of $1,000 for you to invest in your home office. And I was like thinking, okay, but companies are now saving a lot of money while people are working from home. So use some of the savings for them to invest in their home, a better chair, a higher, a better microphone or something virtual in the background, at least a green screen, so that they can feel comfortable in showing up online.
And Spotify have also just I started a podcast of my own the other day. I did an episode about I saw an article. Spotify announced that they are supporting work from home and they're allowing people to do that, and they're encouraging that and also paying kind of big city wages to people who are going to make that decision as well. And that's funny because some of the companies, like I think Twitter and some of these tech companies, they have said if you work from home, then we'll pay you less because they've worked out some kind of metric where if you're working from home, you don't need so much money. So they're reducing the pay of people who work from home. So companies have to get it right. That's the important thing.
In the Netherlands, it wouldn't be allowed. But then again, we have different countries, different laws. But it's also like you're taking, you're giving a child a candy and then you're taking it away just because they are spending some time home. It feels like you are being punished for working from home and being safe at the same time. Teresa.
Yeah, I would just like to give a practical tool, but that is really powerful for the team leader, and that is the one-on-ones between the team leader and so pre-COVID, we already knew people who were thinking about remote work and virtual teams and things like that. We already knew the power of the one-on-ones, but now during COVID, making sure people are okay, asking how you are, what can we help, and research is showing that the number of one-on-ones has increased dramatically during COVID for a good reason. So just listening, asking what's going on, how are you, how are your hours, what's stress, what's going on in your world that I can help you with, can really go a long way for a leader.
That makes me wonder, how much should a leader, how many team members should a leader have under their wing? Because some leaders have too many people under their wing, and if you have like 100 team members, to schedule 100 one-on-ones on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, that's a challenge at itself.
I don't know any leader that has 100. I mean, now is what's happening in IKEA.
No. I mean,
no, I'm not. I hope if that's the case, then I completely agree with you. It's a logical nightmare, a logistical nightmare. But for the average leader that we come across, it's doable.
And it's not only for leaders; it's for colleagues. I mean, when I think about someone who I haven't met for a while, I'll just send them a message. I'll just say, "Oh, I was thinking of you. Hope you're well. Kiss, kiss, hug, hug, whatever." And then it makes someone happy. And we don't need to converse, but it is that being remembered, the
Yes.
feeling of, oh, hang on a minute. And then it leads to a coffee catch up, or it leads to a walk and talk on the phone. How wonderful. But even if it doesn't land, I shared what I felt with someone I cared, and that's all that matters.
It
I
plays a
love
huge
that you
role.
shared
Yeah.
the walk and talk, because now that the weather is better, I want you to walk and talk, literally walk and talk. Because we have been sitting too much
True.
and we have been promising too much. So take the promise to the fullest and go outside and have that conversation. Not only will you get some real vitamin D as well, but it will boost your mood, and you are doing something. You are active outside. So let's move towards outside and have that conversation. As long as the weather is okay, and if you are permitted to walk outside, within the Netherlands, we are only permitted between 4:30 and 9 p.m. So have that walk in between and have, some fresh air as well. So
And I know colleagues who live close enough that they're walking
Yeah.
together with a,
Yeah.
a meter and a half
with the
distance.
distance. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
huge impact. Yeah,
Yes.
it's really good.
Definitely.
And just
And-
on your point
Mhm.
about the team size, yeah, there are many teams that are too big, and
Mhm.
sometimes the workload is not is not equitable. So I played a lot of sport growing up, and played it to a decent level, and we had to learn and talk a lot about leadership. And one thing I take from kind of my sporting background into the workplace, there are lots of similarities, but leadership, when you have an effective group and an efficient group, it's not typically one leader, it's not typically one boss.
Exactly.
So of course, we started talking about one-on-one meetings, but in a modern team, in a modern society, do we really need one leader, one boss to take on the responsibility to have one-on-ones with everybody? That might not be the case. Can we encourage the team to look after the other members? And can that support come from multiple areas, so it's not all, the onus isn't all on one person?
Exactly. We need to hold each other accountable and also be there for each other, and not only, lean on the manager, because who's the manager going to lean on then? Because eventually you have somebody who is shoulderless, right? They have no shoulder to lean on within the company. So support each other, and like I said, have that conversation with each other outside, so that you're doing something and engaging your brain at the same time as well. What do you see? What are the biggest opportunities to lead an inclusive team to infinity and beyond? And I'll start with you, Teresa. What is your prediction regarding this?
So again, I think about the virtual multicultural teams, and there has been research by some professors. I'm going to say their names incorrectly, but Di Stefano and Maznevsky. My apologies. But nevertheless, they looked at virtual teams, multicultural virtual teams, and they said there were three types: creator, equalizer, and destroyer. And a creator, by the name, they're talking about cultural diversity, they're learning about each other's cultures. Destroyers, you can take that name, it's their misunderstandings, frustrations, things like that. And then there's something, the majority, which they call the equalizers. And what happens in the equalizers is that we eliminate talking about cultural diversity. We just want to be the same. That's our goal. So we lose that uniqueness, that interesting, the different diversity of thought. We're not expressing and encouraging it. And I would like to see the discussion of cultural diversity, but even all types of diversity happening more in the team, so that we're moving from equalizers, keeping everything the same, to creators.
That's an interesting perspective, because I was thinking that a lot of companies are in the destroyer part, or some companies are.
Those are the ones we hear
part.
about. Yes.
But that's an interesting. I'm definitely going to look up that research, because that's interesting, and I encourage that. We need to have these uncomfortable sometimes conversations to learn better, to learn how to cooperate better, and to learn how to create that creativity or to spark the creativity that that's the reason why you hire that person, because they have a particular superpower that they can use or boost your company to the next level. So definitely. Alex.
Yeah, 100%. I would just say that we have an opportunity here. We have to frame this situation differently. The conversation, as a whole. I saw on LinkedIn a few days ago, again, another article on LinkedIn, the CEO of Goldman Sachs referring to working from home as an aberration. Yeah, and he said that he was so against it. And there have been many high-profile VPs also talking about how the positive impact of D&I is unquantifiable. And so they're saying that you can't measure it, and maybe therefore, thumbs
you can't
down.
or they won't measure it.
Well, some don't want to measure it, but again, some saying that you can't measure it. But as I said, it's an opportunity here. We're at a crossroads where people, as I said, want to be recognized. They want to be seen. They want to be included. And we have to make sure that people are happy, because, as we said before, we agreed that unhappy people are not productive, and so it's bad for business. But on a human level, we have to. Life is so short, right? So we definitely, again, I would recommend to leaders, we definitely have to invest. So they have to have insiders, headcounts for people inside. They have to have outside perspectives from people like ourselves. They have to put some budget behind it as well, and they have to have a long-term view. That's the opportunity that there is to if they take those cues, we can have success for sure.
Yeah, I like everything that you said, especially in particular to invest. Diversity, working towards inclusive team is an investment that you're making, and your people are also investing in your company, investing in the products that they're making. And these investments can be innovative. I don't need to share all the facts and the figures. If you want to know that, I can definitely share that later. But there are so many business cases about how and why diverse teams, when you activate inclusion, let's keep it real. When you activate inclusion, they will work for the greater good, for your company, for your clients, or for themselves as well. But activate inclusion.
Lower hiring costs, higher retention rates,
exactly,
more innovation, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Thank you, Vinas.
Well, your question made me think of three things. So one was, of course, infinity and beyond is Buzz Lightyear's best thing, isn't it?
I have a son, so I'm in that Disney. Yeah. I'm in that Disney phase right now.
And that's a brilliant personification of an opportunity. Buzz Lightyear is courageous, and he would dare to just go to infinity and beyond, and he wouldn't think about anything as a challenge. And that's the opportunity. Dare to speak up, dare to open these conversations, dare to get messy. And I think there are more people who are now ready to do that.
Yeah.
So that's one of the opportunities. The second thing is, it made me think about geometry, because infinity and beyond might bring us back to the same point, geometrically speaking. So this is the time, this is the tipping point with Black Lives Matter, with diversity, inclusion conversations really boiling up and being high on the agenda. Let's not come back to the same point, but let's go to the next level and the next round. So let's use this as a positive spiral. And the third thing is compassion, because Buzz Lightyear, yes, infinity and beyond, but it is also Star Trek. And Dr. McCoy, who is a very miserable old git, he says, compassion, no machine will have compassion. It's only human. And the more we use this skill, the more we use this feeling and make it more open and shared, the better we will get.
I love these points, and you're mentioning Buzz Lightyear, you're mentioning Star Trek. You hit all the points that I'm passionate about. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. I want to, unfortunately, I've come to an end, and I always, ask this question to my guest speakers. I have a wish, but I want to know what your wish is for 2025. when it comes to humanizing the workplace and leading inclusive teams? I know that we are now in 2021 and that we have 4 years to go, but what do you wish to see in 2025, Alex?
You know, you know what I heard a lot in 2015? I heard that question: where are we going to see the workplace in 5 years? What will the workplace look like? And 5 years down the line, 2021, 2020, for the most part, we got it wrong. For the most part, it's not where we wished it would be. So, for me, hoping things will change isn't the strategy. I love these conversations. I'm all for it. I've got so much energy for it. But what I really want to encourage leaders to do is, as I said, to implement and activate change. And we have to hold ourselves accountable. We have to stop kicking the can down the road and stop thinking about, of course, we have to put in strategies, long-term strategies. But sometimes you see these companies say, well, our strategy for 2045 is X, and we want equality and parity for X.
Yes.
And what are we doing today? I just want to underline that it's a 100% possible and 100% needed that we stop underpaying young people and keeping them out of the workforce. We include older people and stop branding them as unambitious or past it. Women also are sometimes left out of decision-making processes. People of color are passed for leadership. These are things that we need to attack now. So I really want to kind of focus on what we're doing now, as well as what we're doing in 5 years.
I love that. And to underline that, because a lot of companies are pushing forward in 2025, we will be more diverse, or we have more inclusion, but it takes time to implement the change. It takes time to marinate that change. And every step that you're taking right now should be helpful towards that goal. So I want to make the challenge that Alex is doing a little bit more concrete. What are you doing the upcoming 90 days? And I mean, yes, within 90 days, there are actions that you can take towards becoming more inclusive. Have you reached inclusion? No. But you can become more inclusive within 90 days. So what are you going to do? And how are you going to challenge yourself and your team members as well? So thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Benas.
I was thinking when Alex started, I was like, if I think about the suffragette movement, it started in 1903. So it's 117, 118 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And how much did we move? Yeah. So there is that reality. And it's not only about gender equality, it's not only racism, it's also about disabled people, it's about aging workforce, ageism. There are so many different levels. And that's why I love when you say intersectionality, because there are so many different layers. And at least if we have taken 1 or 2 steps towards understanding, towards formulating curious questions around these issues, maybe we will also relax a little bit. Relax so that we don't fear of offending someone, or we don't have the anticipation of being offended, but we can just have conversations to understand and to accept or agree to disagree, but just put them in the middle.
Yeah, we need to have these conversations in the workplace, and we need to address whatever it is needed to address to move forward, because we want to move forward. But as long as you don't talk about it, it feels like people are walking on eggshells. So thank you. Yeah. Teresa.
So I'm very inspired by both what Benas and Alex said. And I'm inspired as well by Alex, particularly saying, what are we going to do now? Or Vivian, what are we going to do in the next 90 days? And I think this is an important moment, because we're going to eventually come out of COVID lockdown. And what are we going to move towards? And this working from home, working from anywhere, could be a much more inclusive structure than what we had pre-COVID. The potential is there, because when you have a working from anywhere, It could also be from any time. Then you're allowing people to work at the rhythm that they are their best, or that you include then people who perhaps cannot travel and are restricted in whatever way. So also you see that some studies show that we get more diversity of thought in the virtual space. Depending on what study you're looking at, hierarchy goes away. So there is an opportunity if organizations do this well. Think about it, be intentional. We went working from home unintentionally. Now we have the opportunity to do it better. And I think this is an interesting conversation to have, and an important conversation, especially when we're talking about inclusivity, being inclusive. So
I love that. And thank you also for adding that. On that note, I am so grateful for having this conversation, and also know that you all inspired me. And I hope that the viewers or the listeners, you take at least one action or one thing that you learned from today and implement that, or try to implement that for the upcoming 3 months, because there's certainly something doable. But you have to challenge yourself and hold each other accountable for the challenge as well. So thank you all for watching Let's Humanize the Workplace, and I will put this up. Thank you all for watching. Know that within a few days, this episode will also be available as a podcast. And next week, so International Women's Day is on Monday, but next week's Tuesday, I will have a special conversation with a few women and one man. Yes, one man who's going to be who's going to have a conversation, and we're going to talk about International Women's Day and what next, right? What next? So thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye.
Well, I really enjoyed that one, and I hope you did too. Please reach out to me and all the others on LinkedIn. That's it for this episode. Thank you to all the listeners out there, and a special thanks to Vivian Acquah, who created and owns that show, as well as the audio. I'm new to podcasting, and I welcome all your support and feedback. Like, comment, share, and rate this podcast. It really helps. See you next time on The Forecast.
Are you listening? Damn.